Thank you for joining in on the chat. You probably don't need a massive introduction. So, Peter Ward from Digital Team, but you've had a long history, mate, in the channel. So how's things going?
Yeah, going fantastic. And you're right, I do have a long and somewhat checkered history, some may say, as well across the channel.
Checkered history, geez, I'm gonna have to come up with some wonderful questions to get the juicy information out. But look, I know we've jumped straight into it, so thank you, Peter, for being so gracious. Yeah, Peter reached out the other day and was telling us some wonderful work that you do on a digital team. But before we kind of get into that, I'd love to dive back into your past a little bit. You've owned multiple organisations and that have been sold over the time. So tell us a little bit about the history of your kind of career as developing tech partners.
Yeah, so look, really the genesis of my career was a database guy from way back, and started my own business focusing on SQL Server, and it was sort of the Australian way. You whack a Y or an O at the end. Wardo didn't sound particularly good, so we went with the Wardy option, and we grew Wardy IT Solutions to be recognised as the global leader and an expert in the Microsoft data platform.
That's absolutely amazing. But you didn't stop there, right? You went on. Wardy IT was hugely celebrated by Microsoft, such a successful organisation. But then you went and started another organisation.
Yeah, well, what I did is I sold that business into a company called MOQ Digital, so an ASX-listed system integrator. And you know, typically the path that you take is when you sell your business, you normally sit on the beach and buy yourself a boat. Instead, I took the road less travelled and ended up being the CEO of the ASX-listed business that acquired us.
Oh, wow. Amazing. And so what was the end journey of that? MOQ ended up being acquired by somebody else. A bit of a pattern I'm seeing here, Peter.
Yes, look, the mandate that I had as CEO was to go and extract some shareholder value, and we took that business private, and that business was acquired by Brennan.
Oh, wow. Excellent. I know Dave Stevens and the team there at Brennan. Shout out to Brennan, amazing organisation. Oh, well, thank you, mate. But now we're on a different venture now. So what is Digital Team?
Yeah, so Digital Team solves the biggest challenge that every technology business has today, and that's being able to find the right skills at the right price.
Okay, interesting. You got me intrigued. Look, skill gap is massive. For me, I've just started Channel Guru, and I've got a development team because we're in part of a platform community. And so I've been knee deep in actually this whole, where do I find talent? I've been to Freelancer, had all the weirdos call me as a result and chase me down, and trying to navigate where to spend dollars and get a good return. So tell me more, how do you actually deliver that good talent at an affordable cost back into the Tech Partner channel?
Yeah, that scenario that you've described about being able to find the contemporary skills that are needed, especially around the momentum around cloud and modern capability that's required. I often joke with customers that finding talent's like trying to find rocking horse poo. It just doesn't exist. So what we do is we design and build teams for organisations in Sri Lanka.
Okay, interesting. I've seen, you and I had a brief chat the other day, and I mentioned to you, I have seen a lot more engagement from people who work in tech out of Sri Lanka. I see it through interactions on LinkedIn, engagement with some of our content, people proactively reaching out to me. What's happening? What's happening in Sri Lanka? Is there a bit of a tech boom there?
Yeah, look, Sri Lanka's really become the hotbed for modern contemporary skills. So up until about 17 years ago, Sri Lanka was really locked off from the rest of the world because of the civil war that occurred over many, many years. When that civil war finished, the government was incredibly progressive at the time. They realised that being predominantly an agricultural-based GDP, that wasn't going to enable them to accelerate and grow globally. So they really focused on becoming a knowledge-based economy. So heavily invested in science, technology, engineering and maths, and continued to grow and continue to build that. And the hyperscalers all saw this, what was going on around the development of skills. So Microsoft and AWS, GCP, even traditional infrastructure brands like Cisco have seen that as well and continue to invest in the education ecosystem, which is why you see this hotbed of modern contemporary skills.
It's so interesting. I love when you hear stories like that where governments or industry bodies make long-term decisions and 5, 10, 20 years down the track, you see that. I mean, you've seen it a lot in sports and getting more diversity in sports or getting more female diversity in sports as well. Some of these things are a long burn, right? But it's amazing to see Sri Lanka do that for the tech industry. So what are some of the cool things you're doing then? What's some of the cool things or cool customers you have and the kind of services and value you're bringing?
Yeah, we work through really three main customers. Our business is 100% channel focused. So we're really about enabling partners to be able to find the skills they need to meet their own customer needs. And what we found is that the traditional managed service providers or TSPs and the more modern terminology, that ability to find that capability. We also find system integrators are looking for those specialist skills, especially skills like Dynamics and Power Platform, which is incredibly difficult in the Australian market. But also then skills in software dev as well. So really across each of those three domains, we're building solutions for amazing customers. And that's everything from a very, very large ISV over in the US, where we're building development capability for them, through to organizations locally like GoMist that's upsetting and really disrupting the whole finance market in fintech for overseas students.
That's so interesting. So this whole notion of fractional work has really taken off in America, and you've seen a lot of consultants now change their LinkedIn profiles, doing fractional this and fractional that. Fancy word for a consultant, I guess. When you think about your typical customer comes and buys, is it just for a term project, or are these normal longer term kind of employees that they're looking for?
Yeah, typically it's longer term employees. I often describe that an organisation will wake up on a Monday morning because they won a bluebird the week before, or unfortunately they've received that resignation letter that's come over their desk in a Monday morning.
Yes.
They're looking for a different way to go and solve that talent problem. So by building a full-time team, they lean in, they become part of the organisation, they wear the polo shirt, they are part of the all hands, the stand-ups. They're really just a full-time employee that happens to be sitting in a lower cost arbitrage.
It's so interesting. I have an employee through one of our gurus has a organisation called Disrupt IT. We use them and I get the same experience. It's an employee of Channel Guru, right, in a full span of control. And wears that individual wears that as a badge of honour. So I love that you've kind of done that. How hard is it though? Like if I'm today, you mentioned a bluebird or someone kind of leaves the organisation and I need some Power BI built. How long does it take from, hey, I'll pick up the phone to I've actually got a meaningful resource in place?
Yeah, the common question that people ask is how fast can we move? Because customers always have a really rapid demand. We can have boots under the desk in 5 weeks. So our process is that we don't carry a bench. We're not trying to jam a square peg in a round hole. We know that every role is different. So a Power BI role in one organisation is very different to a Power BI role in a different organisation. So we take the time to understand the specific laundry list of technical skills, but also understand the culture of the individual organisation as well to make sure that we get that right fit. So within a week, we'll have candidate flow and have candidates in front of an organisation because we want them to be part of the process. Although we do all of the heavy lifting about finding the right skills, the right experience, the right communication and aptitude, we want the customer to then also have the ability to use their own psychometric testing or other platforms. So within a week, we'll have those amazing candidates, and we're super proud that we have an 80% hit rate on first hire. In other words, the first 80%. Person we put in front of a customer, they go, "Where have you been all my life? You're absolutely perfect."
So 80%, so what, is that the due diligence you feel like you're doing to truly understand your customers' needs and then finding the right talent? So you take your time to get it right? I mean, that's such an amazing performance, amazing stat.
Yeah, there's probably two parts of that equation, and one of them is we've been in the shoes of many of our customers before.
Yeah.
We know what good looks like and what those demands of a technology business are to be able to know what good looks like. But we also then use a number of technology tools as well in order to be able to then go and find the creme de la creme to be able to then present to our customers and meet their needs.
It's so interesting. So I'm going to move on a little bit from digital team and pick your brain a little bit about the tech partner industry. It's a tough industry to operate in, and you've seen not just the pace of technology, but there's kind of changing of the guard almost in terms of people who want to exit their businesses. They've been in for a long time. Maybe they don't know how to set up their businesses to be acquired, or they don't even know how to start that conversation or where to go find suitable candidates to potentially acquire them. And so what are your observations? What made you different? Yeah, you've had multiple organizations that were super successful, highly differentiated, highly engaged from vendors like Microsoft. When you kind of reflect on you versus the average tech partner, what made you guys stand out? What was the secret sauce?
Look, I always think what makes a business different is what are they famous for? Okay. It doesn't mean that that's all that they do, but what do then, customers then go to that? In the Wardy IT Solutions days, we were known for SQL Server. So do one thing and do it incredibly well. Little did most people know that in the background, there are a number of other services that we were providing to customers well around data analytics, around software development as well. But, people would come to us specifically for that. And the analogy I use all the time when talking to people is the Norman Hotel in Brisbane. So famous steak restaurant, its tagline is actually Brisbane's worst vegetarian restaurant. Everyone knows them for steaks. But once you get there, you get the fresh shucked oysters off the bay, you get an amazing vintage red wine cellar, boutique beers that rotate on tap every single week, but they don't talk about that. And I think one of the challenges with technology partners is really talking about this broad portfolio of services as opposed to being famous to be able to then attract someone and stand out in what is often a crowded market.
It's really interesting. I had a very inspiring conversation yesterday with Anthony from All IT Solutions. He owns an MSP practice in Canberra. And I bumped into him about 15 years ago when I used to be at BDM traveling the state for Microsoft. And he kept on using this word partner. He was talking about his clients. And I had to stop him halfway through the conversation because I was confused. I'm like, hold on, are you selling to partners or are you... And he explained to me, no, that's the way they describe their end clients. And so, because he doesn't look for necessary clients to have, the values and how they differentiate in market is they're looking for partnerships. And partnerships that they manage proactively and it really makes them stand out and be quite successful. So it's really interesting, right? Because there's plenty of MSPs out there or tech partners will say, well, our differentiator is our team. Or, something, our website's great or whatever it may be, right? But those things just don't actually matter. No one really cares about those things. So it's interesting. So what's happening in the technology space then? So a lot happening, your old kind of Microsoft focused organizations. I'm sure you keep up with some of the Microsoft stuff. Builds on this week. For those of you who haven't seen it, you can jump on live and watch some of that content. What's happening in the technology space that's getting you excited?
Yeah, look, I think what's exciting to me is about the ability to drive efficiency. Look, I think the ability to be able to then do things faster. And I often think that as technologists, we've almost become plumbers. How do we go and connect one system to another system in order to be able to then, drive that efficiency and automation there? And that could be as simple as, taking a contract out of your CRM, automating that to then go and set up all the artifacts that are needed in your project management or your PSA system in order to be able to do that, where traditionally, you'd have human glue holding all of that together, would manually set all of those things up. And I think there's a great unlock that now exists. And I'm seeing many technology organizations really start to take advantage of that and then taking that and then being able to then work out, well, how do we improve the customer experience? So how do we engage deeper with our customers? But how do we delight them at every step of the journey?
Yeah, I love that. You know, I spend a lot of time talking to awesome people like yourself, Peter, and talking to a lot of consultants in the channel. Obviously, it's part of what Channel Guru is focused on doing. And some of the best of consultants articulate that that is exactly what you're saying, is that what's broken with a lot of tech partners is they don't look and strive to get levels of automation inside the organization. So they're not as efficient. Or when they make a change at some point, so say they come up with a marketing campaign on a product to sell, but then that's not connected back into how it's actually processed and invoiced, and all that stuff is not streamlined, right? And so when you're trying to do new things, rather than accelerating your business, you create more and more complexity, and then you wonder why your business is plateauing. Yeah. And that's that level of automation, mate, I think is amazing. And there's a lot of really great consultants or EOS specialists in the channel today, and some in Channel Guru that really help with that. Cool. So what would be your word of wisdom? Well, we've spoken a little bit about today around how partners can potentially reduce costs with engaging with your team. They've got to be able to differentiate, and there's this whole notion of being more organized in business process and automation. If you were to share one wisdom with the world today, with all the tech partners out there, what's it going to be?
I think it's back to what we mentioned before around differentiation, just simply thinking about what are you famous for? What makes your business different and what makes it stand out? And I think just looking through that lens about what is it that you're famous for.
That's so cool, mate. Well, thank you, Peter. I really appreciate you making the time to chat with us today. And, you're one of the early episodes of Channel Chats. Hopefully many more to come in the future. Thank you.
Fantastic. Appreciate it. Thanks so much, Brad.